stepped out behind the restaurant, searching for Adam. The engagement dinner was supposed to be perfect, my night, our celebration. But he had disappeared 20 minutes ago, and I was starting to worry. Then I heard laughter, too familiar and too close. I turned the corner and froze. There, pressed against the brick wall, was Adam with his hands tangled in my sister's hair, their lips locked together like I had never existed in either of their lives. Time stopped. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces before my brain could even process what I was seeing. When they finally noticed me standing there, Tessa didn't look guilty or ashamed. She smirked. Adam straightened his tie and said the words that would haunt me forever. "It just happened, Emma. I'm sorry." My mother appeared behind me seconds later, grabbed my arm, and hissed into my ear, "Don't you dare make a scene. Not here." My engagement night, the one I had planned for months, had just turned into my public humiliation. Let me rewind and tell you who I am. My name is Emma, and I've always been the quiet one, the dependable daughter who held everything together. My sister, Tessa, was the golden child, dramatic, beautiful, adored by everyone who met her. Mom always said she was fragile, that she needed extra attention and protection because the world was too harsh for someone so sensitive. So I became the responsible one, the one who cleaned up messes and never complained. I studied hard, worked 2 jobs through college, and never asked for anything. Tessa dropped out of 3 different schools, dated a dozen men, and somehow always ended up being treated like a princess. Our family dynamic was toxic, but I didn't see it clearly until that night behind the restaurant. Until the moment she destroyed everything I had built with the man I loved. Until I realized that no matter what I did, I would always be second place in my own family. That night broke something fundamental inside me. By morning, my humiliation had spread through our entire family. The group chat exploded with messages. My aunt sent condolences. My cousin asked if I was okay, and then my mother's message appeared. "Things happen for a reason. Sometimes we have to accept that people find better matches elsewhere." Not a single person defended me. Not one. I stared at my phone, reading message after message that either pitied me or justified what Tessa had done. My hands shook as I clicked the Leave Group button and watched the chat disappear from my screen. I had never felt so completely alone in my entire life. An hour later, my landlord texted me about overdue rent. Adam had been handling our finances, pooling our money together for the wedding and our future apartment. Now I had nothing. No savings, no fiancé, no family support. I sat on the floor of my tiny apartment and realized I was utterly, completely alone. But I made myself a promise right then. I would never be the victim again. Boxes surrounded me everywhere I looked. Adam had come by while I was at work and taken everything he had bought for us. The couch, the television, even the kitchen table we had picked out together. The apartment felt empty and cold, like a shell of the life I thought I was building. My phone buzzed with a notification, and I made the mistake of checking Instagram. Tessa had posted a photo of herself wearing my engagement dress, the one I had left at Mom's house, with a caption that made my stomach turn. "When love finds you unexpectedly." The comments were full of heart emojis and congratulations. Nobody seemed to remember that just 3 days ago, that dress was supposed to be for my wedding. I closed the app and threw my phone across the room. Then I did something I had never done before in my life. I opened my laptop and applied for jobs, real jobs, challenging positions at design firms I had always admired but never thought I was good enough for. By midnight, I had sent out 15 applications. 1 week later, I got a call back. My first day at the boutique design firm felt like stepping into a completely different world. The office smelled like fresh coffee and possibility, and the walls were covered with beautiful event designs that made my heart race with excitement. My new boss, Arden, was a sharp woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She looked through my portfolio during our first meeting and said something that changed everything. "Your work is raw but honest. I like that. You have real emotion in your designs, not just technical skill." For the first time in months, I felt genuinely seen by another person. She gave me a stack of files and told me to study the company's previous events. I stayed late that night, absorbing every detail, determined to prove I belonged there. When I finally got home around 9 o'clock, exhausted but hopeful, I checked my phone. There was a direct message from an unknown account that made my blood run cold. You think you can rebuild your life without facing me? Think again. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. I clicked on the profile. It was a blank account with no posts and no followers. But somehow I knew exactly who it was. I blocked the account immediately and tried to go to sleep, but I kept checking my phone every few minutes. The next morning, another message came through from a different account. This time, Tessa didn't hide behind anonymity. She accused me of playing the victim on social media after I posted a simple motivational quote about resilience and starting over. Her message was long and accusatory, full of justifications about how love is unpredictable and how I should be happy for them. At the bottom, she mentioned that her engagement to Adam was now official. I scrolled through her profile before blocking this account too. There were photos of them together, laughing, kissing, holding hands. And then I saw it, the ring. It was the exact same ring I had picked out, the one Adam and I had chosen together at the jewelry store. She was wearing my ring on her finger, living my life. 3 weeks into my new job, Arden called me into her office with an excited smile. "Emma, I have a big project for you," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. "You'll be assisting on a high-profile wedding. The couple specifically requested our premium package, unlimited budget, complete creative freedom. This could be huge for the company." I opened the folder, ready to dive into the challenge, and my entire world tilted sideways. The names on the contract made my breath catch in my throat. Tessa Beaumont and Adam Clark, my sister and my ex-fiancé. My company was designing their wedding. Fate had just thrown me directly back into the fire I had been trying so desperately to escape. Arden noticed my expression. "Emma, are you all right?" I closed the folder carefully and looked up at her, forcing my face into a neutral expression. "I'm fine," I said. "When do we start?" I didn't tell her who they were. I didn't explain the connection. I wanted to see how this would play out, wanted to watch karma work its magic without my interference. The first planning meeting happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I walked into the conference room with my portfolio and design samples, professionally dressed and emotionally prepared, or so I thought. When Tessa walked through the door and saw me sitting at the table, she froze mid-step. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the shock on her face. Adam followed behind her and went pale when our eyes met. The guilt in his expression was almost satisfying. Arden looked between us, sensing tension but not understanding it. "You two know each other?" she asked casually. Tessa recovered first, letting out a laugh that sounded too loud and too forced. "We're sisters," she said, reaching out to squeeze my shoulder in a gesture that felt more possessive than affectionate. "Isn't life funny?" I smiled calmly and met her eyes. "It really is," I said. The meeting lasted 2 hours, during which I took detailed notes about their vision, their color preferences, their dream venue. I was professional, courteous, and completely detached. Watching them was like observing strangers pretending to be in love. During the dress-fitting appointments that I coordinated for Tessa, she found opportunities to whisper little cruelties when no one else could hear. While the seamstress was pinning fabric, Tessa leaned close to me and hissed, "Don't embarrass yourself by pretending you matter here. You'll always be in my shadow, just like you always have been." I had spent my entire childhood listening to comments like that, absorbing them and believing they were true. But something had changed inside me since that night behind the restaurant. I looked at her reflection in the mirror and replied softly, "Shadows disappear when the light shifts, Tessa." She blinked, confused by my calm response, not understanding the deeper meaning. But she would eventually. I was no longer the girl who accepted whatever treatment my family decided to give me. Arden happened to be walking past the fitting room and overheard the tail end of our exchange. Later that afternoon, she pulled me aside. "You handle pressure beautifully, Emma," she said thoughtfully. "Have you ever considered leading your own projects instead of just assisting?" Arden's question planted a seed that grew rapidly. 2 weeks later, she assigned me a solo client, a charity gala for a local children's hospital. It was smaller than the weddings we usually handled, but it was entirely mine to design and execute. I threw myself into the work with an intensity I didn't know I possessed. I created mood boards, negotiated with vendors, designed centerpieces that told a story. The night of the gala was magical, elegant decorations, moved guests, and genuine appreciation for the work I had put in. The local newspaper covered the event and mentioned my name in the article. My name, not Tessa's sister or Adam's ex-fiancé. just Emma Hart, event designer. When I showed up to work the next morning, Arden had framed the article and hung it on the office wall. "You're talented," she said simply. "Don't forget that." That same afternoon, I was in the office kitchen when I overheard Tessa and Adam arguing in the conference room next door. The walls were thin, and their voices carried. They were fighting about money, about bills, about things that sounded far from the fairy tale they had been portraying on social media. At their next planning meeting, something shifted. Tessa's credit card was declined when she tried to pay the deposit for her dress alterations. I watched her face turn red as she fumbled through her wallet, pulling out card after card. Adam looked irritated rather than concerned, muttering something under his breath about debt problems and overspending. Tessa noticed me watching the entire embarrassing scene unfold, and her fake smile trembled at the edges. She finally pulled out cash, crumpled bills that she counted twice, and handed it to the seamstress with shaking hands. The fairy tale was cracking, revealing something uglier underneath. I said nothing, did nothing, just took notes for the meeting and remained professional. Later that night, long after I had gotten home and changed into comfortable clothes, my phone lit up with a message. It was from Adam. "We need to talk. I made a mistake, Emma. Can we meet?" I stared at the message for a long time, feeling nothing. No anger, no longing, no temptation, just emptiness where love used to live. I deleted the message without responding. Adam sent 3 more messages over the next week, each one more desperate than the last. He wanted to meet for coffee, wanted to explain himself, wanted me to understand that he had chosen wrong and realized too late what he had given up. For one brief, fleeting moment, maybe 2 seconds total, I imagined saying yes. I imagined meeting him at that coffee shop we used to love, listening to his apologies, maybe even feeling vindicated by his regret. Then I remembered the kiss behind the restaurant. I remembered the smirk on Tessa's face. I remembered my mother telling me not to make a scene while my world fell apart. I deleted every message without responding to a single one. 2 days later, Tessa posted a photo on Instagram, her and Adam kissing at sunset, with a caption that was clearly directed at me. "When your sister can't let go." The comments section was full of people who had no idea what was really happening, all of them sending heart emojis and celebrating their love story. I closed the app and went back to work on my designs. My mother called me on a Sunday afternoon while I was grocery shopping. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Emma, you need to stop provoking your sister," she said without even saying hello first. "What are you talking about?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Your job, working on her wedding. She says you're being passive-aggressive and trying to ruin everything for her." I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. "She ruined my engagement, Mom. She kissed my fiancé at my own engagement dinner, and you told me not to make a scene." There was silence on the other end, then my mother's voice came back sharp and defensive. "That's in the past, Emma. You need to move forward and stop dwelling on things. Your sister's wedding is important to her." I felt something inside me finally snap. "And my engagement was important to me," I said quietly. "But that didn't matter to anyone, did it?" My mother started to say something else, but I hung up. The favoritism that had defined my entire childhood hadn't changed at all. The next day, Arden offered me a promotion, lead designer on all luxury events. 2 days before the wedding, everything fell apart in the most spectacular way. The venue called our office in a panic. Tessa and Adam's booking had been canceled due to unpaid bills. They owed thousands of dollars in deposits that had never been processed. Tessa immediately blamed me, storming into the office and screaming that I had sabotaged the paperwork and deliberately ruined everything out of jealousy. Arden listened to her accusations calmly, then pulled out our files and showed proof that I had nothing to do with the venue payments. That responsibility had been entirely on the couple. Adam stood in the corner, silent and ashamed, while Tessa's meltdown intensified. "This is your fault," she screamed at me, mascara running down her face. "You've always been jealous of me, always wanted what I have." Arden's expression hardened. "Ms. Beaumont, I'm going to have to ask you to leave, and effective immediately, we're terminating your contract with our firm." The office went completely silent. Tessa stared at Arden in disbelief. "You can't do that," she whispered. "I just did," Arden replied. "Please leave." Tessa's meltdown was explosive and public. She screamed threats about lawsuits and reviews, called me horrible names, and accused Arden of being unprofessional. Through it all, I stood silently by the window, watching everything unravel exactly the way karma intended. Adam finally spoke up, but only to say, "Tessa, just stop. This isn't helping." She whirled on him. "You're taking her side," she shrieked. "After everything." He walked out mid-sentence, leaving Tessa standing alone in our office, tears streaming down her face, her perfect facade completely shattered. Security eventually escorted her from the building. When the door finally closed behind her, the office remained quiet for several long moments. Then Arden turned to me and said softly, "You handled that with remarkable grace, Emma. We'll get new clients from this. People appreciate professionalism." I nodded, still processing everything that had just happened. Watching my sister fall apart should have felt satisfying, but instead I just felt tired. Tired of the drama, tired of the toxicity, tired of being pulled into their chaos. I wanted peace, not revenge. 3 years passed like pages turning in a book. I climbed the ladder at the firm, eventually becoming a partner. My designs were featured in wedding magazines and lifestyle blogs. I traveled to coordinate destination events, beaches in Hawaii, vineyards in California, historic estates in New England. I healed slowly, building a life that had nothing to do with my sister or my ex-fiancé or the family that had never truly seen me. My mother and I rarely spoke, maybe exchanging brief texts on holidays. Tessa and I hadn't communicated at all. I had moved forward, rebuilt myself, discovered who I was without their shadows hanging over me. Then one afternoon, a thick cream envelope arrived at the office with my name written in elegant calligraphy. Inside was an invitation to a charity gala hosted by Tessa Beaumont. My hands trembled slightly as I read the details. The next morning, Arden walked into my office with a client file. "We just got hired for a major event," she said. "Big budget, high profile." She set the folder on my desk, and I already knew what name would be inside before I opened it. The client meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday at 3 o'clock. I arrived early, setting up my presentation materials and centering myself emotionally. When Tessa walked through the conference room door, I barely recognized her. She was thinner, her once bright confidence replaced by something brittle and forced. Her smile looked painful. She had clearly been through something difficult in the 3 years since I had last seen her. She was divorced. I had heard through mutual acquaintances that Adam had left her for someone else about a year into their marriage. Poetic justice. She sat down across from me and finally seemed to register who I was. Her face went pale. "Emma," she whispered. I smiled professionally. "Good to see you again, Tessa. Should we discuss your vision for the event?" The meeting was awkward but civil. She needed this gala to be perfect. She was trying to rebrand herself, rebuild her reputation after public scandals and financial troubles had destroyed the image she had carefully cultivated. I listened, took notes, and treated her exactly like I would treat any other client. Professional, detached, fair. It wasn't until she saw my name on the presentation board, lead event designer, Emma Hart, that the full reality seemed to hit her. The little sister she had always overshadowed, the woman whose fiancé she had stolen, the person she had spent years treating as inferior, was now the successful professional who held her event's fate in her hands. Tessa's hand shook as she signed the contract. Her assistant asked, "Ms. Beaumont, should we proceed with this firm?" There was a long pause. Tessa looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in our lives. "Yes," she said quietly. "Proceed." After the meeting ended and everyone else had left, I found an email from her waiting in my inbox. The subject line was empty. The message said simply, "Please don't ruin me, Emma. I know I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm asking anyway." I read it 3 times, feeling a complicated mixture of emotions. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to respond with anger. But mostly, I just felt sad about everything that had been broken between us. As I worked on planning Tessa's gala, I discovered something I probably shouldn't have. While reviewing the budget and payment schedules, I noticed irregularities, invoices that didn't match, payments coming from accounts that seemed questionable. Tessa was funding this charity event with investor money she hadn't properly secured, essentially running a sophisticated scheme to rebuild her public image while potentially committing fraud. I could have exposed her easily. One phone call to the right person, one forwarded email to the authorities, and her entire operation would crumble. I sat at my desk late one night, staring at the evidence on my computer screen, and made a decision. I wouldn't destroy her. I wouldn't become the villain she had always painted me as. The truth would reveal itself without my interference. It always did. Karma didn't need my help. 2 days later, a journalist called the office asking questions about Tessa's event, about the funding sources, about whether we had verified the legitimacy of her organization. I answered honestly and professionally, providing only the facts without editorial comment. "I trust you'll investigate thoroughly," I told them before hanging up. The night of the gala arrived with all its expected glamour. I had done my job perfectly. The decorations were stunning, the flow was seamless, every detail executed flawlessly. Cameras flashed as guests arrived in expensive gowns and tailored suits. Champagne flowed from crystal fountains. Tessa moved through the crowd in a designer dress, clinging to her fake sponsors, playing the role of successful philanthropist even as everything crumbled beneath her feet. I stood in the background where I always preferred to be, watching her perform. She had always been the performer, the one who needed an audience. I had learned to find power in quiet observation. Halfway through the evening, I noticed a woman I recognized arrive, the journalist who had called days earlier. She wasn't on the guest list. Tessa saw her too, and I watched the color drain from my sister's face. The journalist made her way toward the stage where Tessa was preparing to give her planned speech. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just a quiet sense that justice worked in mysterious ways. Tessa was mid-speech, thanking donors and describing her charity's mission, when the journalist stepped forward with a microphone. "Ms. Beaumont, would you care to comment on the fraudulent invoices associated with this event?" The room went silent. Every head turned. Cameras that had been capturing the glamorous evening suddenly focused on Tessa's face as it transformed from confident to terrified. "I don't know what you're talking about," Tessa stammered. The journalist pressed forward with more questions, about fake donations, about investor money used inappropriately, about a pattern of financial deception. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. The sponsors Tessa had been clinging to all evening quietly moved toward the exits. Her investors, the ones funding the whole operation, walked out in a group, their expressions cold and furious. I remained where I was standing, near the back wall, silent and calm. I had done nothing except tell the truth when asked. The rest had unfolded exactly as it needed to. Tessa's eyes found mine across the crowded room, and for a moment we just looked at each other. Then she ran off stage, mascara already streaking down her carefully made-up face. Tessa's company collapsed within 3 weeks. The news coverage was extensive, articles about fraud, about deception, about a woman who had built her entire public image on lies. Her face appeared on business websites as a cautionary tale. The financial damage rippled outward, affecting investors and partners who had trusted her. My mother called me crying, her voice desperate. "You have to help your sister, Emma. She's lost everything. She has nothing left." I sat on my couch, holding the phone away from my ear for a moment, taking a deep breath before responding. "Maybe now she understands how that feels," I said gently. "I'm sorry she's suffering, but this isn't my responsibility to fix." My mother started to argue, to use guilt the way she always had, but I interrupted her. "She made choices. Those choices had consequences. That's not my fault." I hung up before she could say anything else. The next morning, Arden called me into her office with champagne and an enormous smile. "Emma, I have incredible news," she said, pouring 2 glasses. "The board voted unanimously. You're being made full partner of the firm. Congratulations." I had built this success from nothing, from the ruins of my broken engagement and shattered family. Tessa showed up at my office on a rainy Thursday afternoon 3 months later. She looked completely different, thinner, exhausted, without makeup or the designer clothes she used to wear like armor. My assistant buzzed me, her voice uncertain. "Emma, your sister is here. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's asking to see you. Should I send her away?" I thought about it for a long moment. "No," I said finally. "Send her in." Tessa walked into my office slowly, looking around at the awards on my walls, the magazine features, the evidence of everything I had built. She sat down across from my desk, and for several minutes neither of us spoke. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Emma," she whispered. "For everything. For Adam, for the wedding, for every cruel thing I ever said or did. I thought you had everything handed to you, that life was easy for you. I was wrong." I studied my sister's face, seeing real remorse there for perhaps the first time ever. "So was I replied quietly. "I thought you were stronger than this." Tessa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Can we start over?" she asked, her voice small and broken. "Can we be sisters again?" I looked at the woman sitting across from me, the person who had tormented me throughout childhood, who had stolen my fiancé and laughed about it, who had spent years making me feel worthless. Part of me wanted to say yes, wanted to believe people could change, wanted to rebuild something from the wreckage of our relationship. But I had learned something important in the 3 years since my engagement ended. Some doors stay closed for a reason, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. "I wish you healing, Tessa," I said gently. "I genuinely hope you find peace and figure out who you want to be, but I can't be part of that journey. Some things are too broken to fix." She nodded slowly, understanding in her expression even as fresh tears fell. "I understand," she said. She stood up and walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. "You deserved better than how I treated you," she said without turning around. "I see that now." Then she was gone. 6 months later, I walked through the gallery space where my company was hosting a major event, a rebranding launch for the same magazine that had once covered Tessa's scandals. The irony wasn't lost on me. The space was elegant and serene, filled with exactly the kind of beauty I had always dreamed of creating. People approached me throughout the evening, calling me the woman who rebuilt herself, asking about my story, treating me with respect I had fought hard to earn. My life wasn't perfect. I was still working through family trauma in therapy, still learning how to trust people, still discovering who I was outside of the shadows that had defined my childhood. But it was mine. Authentically, completely mine. This story wasn't about revenge, though I knew some people saw it that way. It was about resurrection, about rising from ashes that someone else had created. Fate hadn't punished Tessa for me, it had simply revealed who we both truly were. In the end, I didn't need to ruin her. She had done that when she tried to steal a future that was never meant to be hers. Success, I learned, wasn't about defeating someone else. It was about becoming yourself.